Welcome, Shehnaz, and we're really happy to have you here with us today. And I first would like to start with introducing you and kind of sharing how I came across meeting you, and then we can open it up for our guests to introduce themselves, and then we can just have a nice conversation, right? And so I met Shehnaz. One day I was sitting at home and I opened up my YouTube and there's a podcast from Alex Ferreira called The Next Level Soul. And he had an interview with Shehnaz and it caught my eye and I just, I watched it and immediately, Shehnaz, I was mesmerized by your authentic spirit and how your passion and your compassion. That's what I was mesmerized with first. The beautiful soul and quantum being that you are. That's what I noticed, right? And as you were sharing your experience with not only currently being working for NASA and the rockets that are going to the moon, but as well your most recent published book, The Quantum Being, and which we have right here.
Thank you.
Which I've read, by the way, and so and it's amazing, and I can't wait to have more time with you. But I in the middle of me seeing your interview, I was so taken back that I immediately pulled out my computer and I started looking for you. And I found your website. And without even looking at your website, I just looked for an email. And I emailed you. And I emailed you because for the last 30 years or so, I've been working as an educator in Holyoke, Massachusetts. And in the last, I want to say 20 years, I have come across amazing, amazing students who have the most profound, amazing questions about life and our purpose and about the laws of the universe and about the stars and astrology and esoteric science and conspiracy theories and all of the above, right? And so I shared with you, I introduced my students to you in this email, and I shared that I was on a journey of wanting to create a alternative space to have these discussions, because I've noticed how many of my students were hungry for these discussions and don't really have others to speak with around these topics. And I've also noticed that a lot of the podcasts that are out there would bring on scholars, and you don't hear the voices of the youth or the voices intergenerationally. And so today we have an intergenerational group here, and they're excited to hear more about your personal experience growing up in Karachi, Pakistan, your new book on the quantum beings, and your current position working for NASA, And so without any further ado, I would let you introduce yourselves, and then Shehnaz can come on and introduce herself. Okay?
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah, hi. Hi. It's good to
Hi
see
there.
you. My name is Raymond, or Ray for short. Also from Holyoke, Massachusetts. A little nervous because it's kind of exciting to actually see you face to face. Yeah. Goodness. Good introduction.
My name is Omar. I was born in Springfield, but I was raised in Holyoke, in the hood section, more so to speak. I'm 24, I have 2 daughters, and I'm not tripping.
Hello. I'm Graciela, and I also grew up in Holyoke. And yeah, I'm here because Rhonda's just amazing and has always like heard my unrealistic thoughts, I guess you can say. And yeah, I'm excited and to learn more and hear more on your thoughts and your views of stuff.
Hello, my name is Natalia Munoz. I work and live here in Holyoke. And Tanasi, thank you for your generosity in sharing with us. I know you come from a part of the world that is
One of the most dangerous
places
cities
in the world. And that in itself presents so many challenges. Some of the youth here and some of the people who'll be watching this later also come from very dangerous parts. And I'm wondering, what was that strength that you had to imagine yourself in a place like you are right now with books, you're an author, you're a scientist, you're working for one of the premier organizations in the world. And what is the difference between you now and the little girl from Karachi?
Well, it's a very great question. First of all, great to meet all of you. All of you, I love that you are here, and I'm grateful for this gathering. You know, in a way, I have to say that there isn't much difference. The only difference is that I have proved to that little girl that whatever I've dreamt of, whatever I've imagined, I actually got it beyond my imagination. Like, I imagine speaking English, right? I did not imagine speaking English with the general in a setting where we're talking about reliability of the missile. I did not imagine writing a book in English that's going to touch on a subject like quantum physics and quantum field and theory of everything that people are still wanting to understand that concept. I did not imagine having to be a public speaker in English, right? I didn't imagine having internationally everybody wanting to talk to me, right? So all of that was beyond my imagination. So what I'm saying is that I have already, created that confirmation for me. And now I want everybody else to know that whatever you're going to imagine, you're going to get way more than that. So the good thing is that imagination is just the step in the right direction. But you have to trust to take the action that follows your imagination. You can't just imagine and not do anything, because when you don't do anything means you don't even know, you don't even trust yourself.
Thank you for that. I want to keep going, but wait, I know that Philly did not get to introduce herself, so I would really like to give her that moment of introducing herself as well.
Thank you so much, Rhonda. I love you, Rhonda. It's a pleasure to meet you guys over there in Holyoke. I know that we would get along very well. Hello, Shehnaz. It's really amazing to be speaking with you right now. My name is Felicia Villanueva. I'm from Yonkers. I'm the Westchester County Poet Laureate. And I really was excited to meet you because you said something in one of your interviews about not accepting the reality. There's more, and not settling with this is it. And I identify with that. And I've seen me move so much things in my life by just believing that I can do it. So I'm really excited to hear more from you today. Thank you very much.
Great to meet you.
So go ahead, let's open up.
Okay.
You wanted to respond. Sorry.
I'm gonna keep talking unless any of you, start talking, just so you know, you gotta jump in. The world is, okay. Why are we going back to the moon?
I think that it's interesting because it was President Donald Trump who initiated the entire project, I do believe that it is kind of a cosmic project because, I know that people have doubt whether we went to the moon or not. There's a whole bunch of story about, Dr. Edgar Mitchell and what he saw on the moon and how he even died. And the very fact that we're actually going to the moon, and then even right now we had a solar eclipse, and I had friends sending me videos that shared that how moon is actually not what it claims to be. So there's a lot of interesting things around the moon. But the thing that's so interesting is that it's all connected with every aspect of our existence and the world that we live in, the matrix world, and what everybody gives very much importance to versus what really is important, right? So I think it connects to all of that illusion versus reality, right? And when I say reality, I mean actually more like what is illusion and what is really real, right? Because reality itself is an illusion, right? When you really get into the definition of it. So I want to use the word like what is really fact? What is really, but the thing that is interesting is that the more we want to uncover that aspect of our existence, the question we need to ask to ourselves is what are we hiding from our own self? And the reason I'm saying that, because I had a free consultation this morning with a man, a Pakistani man, right? For the first time, because I had like more than 125 consultations since I have become visible to the world in February. And this man, because he was Pakistani and Muslim, I was very much happy that he even took an action and initiated an action to meet a Muslim woman, right, across the world. And he actually shared with me that he said that when I heard you, I knew that I can be honest with you because you're not going to judge me. And then he told me in that consultation that he's gay and he can't say that because Muslim is very, very strict about those type of things. I mean, they basically consider completely as end of your existence when you mention anything like that. But he felt comfortable sharing that with me. And then he told me that majority of the people that he run into, they all are faking their existence. Like what they say to people versus what they do does not match. So what I'm saying is that let's bring this and perpetuate it in the whole universe, right? So what's going on is if NASA is lying about the moon, means we must be lying about something to ourselves. So because as above, so below, right? So what I'm saying is as we become more and more honest with every aspect of our existence, we're going to know exactly what's happening. I personally think that me being part of, in the midst of all of that, there must be a good reason because I'm going to be the first one. If I learn that NASA is full of shit, then I'm going to be the first one who's going to figure out a way to do whatever is right. But I'm there in the middle of it right now because the whole world is full of shit.
So and following up on that, do you have anything that you wanna? Okay, following up, how does, you're a scientist, you see beyond the obvious. There's a whole other reality of science. So then spirituality and science, can they coexist?
Oh, 100%. I look at science as fact-based. Science pretty much is what physically we can prove. Spirituality is what non-physically we can prove. So quantum field, right, which is what I use as an interconnected field. It's basically the field that connects all of us. That field we cannot see with our naked eye, right? So as a scientist, I believe in quantum field because it has been proven based on quantum physics, right? But as a spirituality, I believe in that because I've felt it in my heart, right? So what I'm saying is you can prove that with your own self, and that is beyond science, because science to me is a very limited way of gauging things. And I say that it helps to communicate the language. And majority of the people who are scientists, they believe that science should be the only religion. And to me, it's like we are a multidimensional species, right? So physically, we can use science to prove ourselves, but we have also a heart emotionally, which gives us the gauge. When you love someone, science may not be able to prove that you love them. You may not even tell them that you love them, but you love them, right? So that is something that you are feeling in your heart, right? Similarly, when you're thinking, right? You're thinking and you can easily hide. You can pretend that you're not thinking, but you are thinking and you're the only one who knows it. So that's mental. And then spiritually, my God, it's like, so yeah, that's what I'm saying, that this interconnection that we have is beyond science, and magic precedes science, spirituality precedes science, and science matches up ultimately, but you can't wait on science to prove everything.
That was awesome.
I know that you guys have some questions that you came with, so, yeah.
Yeah,
oh, here you go. So, how hard was it to like break the religion tradition type way of thinking and sorry.
That's okay, I wanna just
That's okay.
add to that because, you know, what Omar is asking actually is something that I've experienced with having conversations with students who are navigating the belief system that they were born into versus what you're feeling now, Samantha.
Like the programming that you got when you were younger to then like unwinding all that learning and relearning what you know now, like what is true for you.
Yeah, so you're saying how hard was it to break away from all the things that I was born and right? So I'll tell you, that was exactly 24 years ago when I broke away from all that. And it was kind of like I lived a life that my tradition, my religion, my parents wanted me to live. I was married for 10 years. I had 2 kids with my first husband. I did the arranged marriage and every single thing. I was a very pious Muslim girl. I prayed 5 times a day, I did everything. And I was extremely unhappy in the marriage. And it took me 2 years to divorce my husband because I was wanting to save the marriage. So the point is that I wanted to make sure that I be the good person, be the good daughter, be the good wife, be the good mother, right? So I always wanted to be all of that. However, I knew that no matter how much I wanted to do it, everybody wasn't understanding what I was feeling in my heart. So finally, when I made a decision of divorcing my husband, it was not easy decision, but it almost felt like that if I don't do it, then I am going to die from inside out. And I had to represent myself, right? Because who else is going to represent me? And that decision came with a lot of pain and a lot of hopelessness when I knew that no matter, because I tried to save the marriage for 2 years. I did everything in my power. I wrote letters to my husband. I explained that how can we make it work? Nothing was going in any kind of positive direction. And it was very, like, even when I did it, I felt very devastated, right? So I did not know that what I'm doing is going to open a whole new door for me, right? Because it wasn't a happy ending, according to me at the time. So what I'm saying is when you go through it, it's not fun by any means. It's actually pretty painful. And you feel very sad, you feel alone, you feel like whether you're even doing the right thing. And then in my case, when I divorced him, I just didn't divorce one person. I divorced the entire community. I divorced the entire religion. Like every single person I knew up to that point, they thought that what I was doing was the worst thing any Muslim girl can do. So to me, it was I actually became like, after that, people told me that they even use my name to tell their kids to keep away from me. Like in my community, like I became like a black duckling or whatever the word is, right? I mean, it was horrible. And I was like, holy shit. I mean, it was pretty messed up. And then I'm living in a foreign country, and it was right around the time when 9/11 happened. So I'm living alone in a house with a small kids, and my youngest was 2 years old. And I even had one drunk guy knocking at the door. And I actually opened the door with a little thingy, that keeps the door half open. And my son, he started speaking for whatever reason. And he said, gun. He said, mom, gun. And when I heard him say that, I shut the door because the guy wanted to attack me with the gun because of 9/11, because he knew I was a Muslim woman and he felt like I am responsible for 9/11. You see my point? So it's kind of like a pretty messed up situation that I'm already like dealing with my own challenge. And then I have all these people thinking that I'm the terrorist Muslim. And it was not a happy time by any means. Mm-hmm. But then you take one day at a time. I had a hard time sleeping at night because I was very scared at night. I've always been scared with darkness. So to me, there were times I was like crying in the blanket and praying every single Arabic prayers I remembered, because that was my saving grace.
Right. Thank you.
So, kind of jumping off of that question, I had seen from one of your videos this really powerful quote that you had said. And it was the liberation you were seeking was a captivity. And I'm just wondering, like, what keeps others from fleeing that golden cage that you had mentioned in one of your videos? And I'm wondering if it's maybe because like we put too much focus on trying to change the old that we can't really create what's new. So like what's old essentially is heavy and like holds us back. Um, yeah, I'm wondering, like, how do people manage to endure like you did?
Right. So actually, it's funny what you just said. There's a quotation from Buckminster Fuller which explains exactly that. Is that in order to build a new reality, you have to you can't keep on latching on to the old reality, because how are you going to build something new, right? It's almost like if you want to solve a problem, but if you keep thinking from the same frequency that you initiated the problem, how are you going to solve it, right? So it's along the same line. So the whole point is that what you have to do is just know that whatever we interact with in our physical reality is actually an illusion. You know why it's an illusion? Because it's not the whole truth. It's like when you look at the iceberg, right? And you look at the top of the iceberg, that's what you're interacting with. So what is hidden is a very large piece. So whatever you interact with on a regular basis in your physical dimension is a very small percentage of what you really exemplify and what you really are made of, right? So when you understand that fundamental phenomena, what's going to happen is that if you are, let's say if you're sitting in a prison, and even though you're giving a lifetime imprisonment, I personally believe that if that person is listening to my conversation right now, he can make a change if he wants to, right? Because nothing is 100% solid. The reason it appears to be is because you believe in it, right? So if somebody's giving you lifetime sentence and you're in a prison, and so now you think that you're going to be in this small, tiny cube for the rest of your life, as long as you believe in it, you will. But if you say, you know what, I'm not going to be here, watch me how I'm going to exit. You're going to exit because you see, you have already messed up the reality that you're in. So the whole idea is that you're going to have to do some messy work, but that's how you open the door. And the door to opening that is your beliefs. So because, whatever you believe truly happens. So that was the thing that for me, I really had that spirit. Like I always knew, like whenever I was not happy, I knew that there has to be a way out. Like I always knew that, right? And yeah, like even though I interacted with people and I interacted with everybody, I tried to convince everybody and nobody was listening to me. It did not stop me because I believed in my own self. And I don't know how that power was there, considering that was not that simple and easy by any means. Maybe that's one of my gifts that I was born with, right? We all have our unique gifts, and that became my tether that kept taking me to all these new places.
I kind of wanted to go back to that analogy that you said about the prison. So hypothetically, right, let's say somebody was in a prison and maybe they had a life sentence and they were like, okay, I want to get out of here, I don't want to be here my whole life. So it's like they have to match that belief in their spirit to align with that frequency, that timeline of them coming out of prison, maybe on parole or I don't know, something along those lines. Yeah, so it's more like you have to take action even without getting the necessary feedback from the universe.
That is true. Right. But then there's more to the story in that particular, let's stay on that thread, right? So for example, the thing is the prison is a perception, right? So of course, he is in the prison, but there are times he's doing other tasks, right? Or whatever he or she, right? So the point is that when he's doing other tasks, if he can get lost in it, where he actually starts saying that I'm going to enjoy every single thing that I do because I'm here for a reason, I probably deserve it, whatever I've done, right? Like if he starts treating the entire thing as more like it's like you're changing your perception, you're changing your belief, you are also showing up differently because you're changing your attitude. When you start changing all of these inputs, right, then what happens is that your experience will change, the people you run into will change, and people will start liking it. some people will say, oh my God, I like you so much. You may completely start opening a whole new trajectory for you.
Okay, it's interesting.
I wanted to follow up on you saying, when you said, well, nobody was listening to me, right? It made me think of when I was a dean of students working in high school. And I started sharing with my colleagues the pattern that I was seeing around the energy and either the fights or the emotions during a full moon. And I would tell my colleagues, listen, if you notice, within the week of a full moon, there's always emotions really raising. Either there's a fight, there's arguments, there's this. And I was suggesting that we do more mindfulness practices and more checking in and all of that, right? And so my colleagues, and this is probably a two-part question for you. My colleagues would kind of chalk it up to, oh, there goes Rhonda again, talking about the planets and their characteristics and how they impact us. They just kind of was like, that's Rhonda again, talking what Rhonda talks about, right? And she can actually do a presentation on the planets instead of being a dean, like stuff like that they would say. They kind of chuckle, right? However, the students would have those conversations with me. And we would talk about how, well, if the moon affects the water and we encompass mostly water, then if it affects the tides, it can be creating tides in us. And depending on what emotion that you're on at the time could increase tenfold, whether good or bad. So my question would be then, what are your thoughts as a rocket scientist who knows the planets and the stars and around the characteristics of the planets and what effect they might have, their energy might have on us or us on them? And two, your experience with your own colleagues at NASA and what is that like for you and what you're doing with the quantum physics and stuff, and how are you seeing with your colleagues versus people that might think like you and the people that are actually listening to you? Yeah.
Right. So first question, everything is interconnected, right? So just imagine that we are standing on Earth, right? Earth is moving, right, with respect to the sun, and the moon is moving with respect to the Earth, and then all the other planets are connected, right? So when you start, if you imagine that model of all these planets and they are connected with each other, there's a motion that is connected with each other, right? Because that's how they sustain and held a certain position in space, right? Every single thing affects every single thing. So there is no question about that, because it is just the way it is. So that's why it's so important that anything that happens to any, like especially when like a solar eclipse just happened, right? I mean, that's a pretty major cosmic event, and it's not going to happen for another 20 years. So when something like that happens, you truly have stir up everybody's energy. And then if you were looking at the solar eclipse, you saw the solar flare. It was pretty obvious that affects the electromagnetic field in the ionosphere. It affects the electromagnetic field in our quantum field. It affects all of us in a way that we don't even know it, but we are all getting affected. So that dance is always happening all the time. It's just when some major event triggers, like 9/11 happened, right? Certain triggers, it becomes obvious to see it because of the intensity of the event, right? Because everybody comes together, everybody's also tuned into the same broadcast channel, right? Because we were all taken by the solar eclipse. So when we feed into that, because all of us are focusing on the same channel, we multiply and amplify the effects. So that's 100% true, that the whole lunatic, right? We say lunatic for a reason, because it is connected with the lunar moon being, in that frequency. And the whole moon and Earth have such a direct connection. And going back to, Natalie, right? Am I saying her name right? Natalia. Like when you were asking, why are we going to the moon, right? And of course, mainly we're going to the moon is because, like, based on what NASA is saying, is that we're going to the moon because we want to live there ultimately so we can go to Mars. So moon is actually more like a layover place, okay? So goal is to colonize Mars, but in order to colonize Mars, we have to colonize moon. So that's the reason that NASA is basically making a statement officially that we're going to the moon. I personally believe that going to the moon is a good thing for us to do, because it actually is very challenging in many, many ways technologically, because it's so hard to live on the moon or on the Mars, especially with our physical bodies the way it is. But also, I think it's going to open the door for what is real and what is illusion because of the fact that people are wondering what moon is. So just imagine if you start living on a moon, just imagine if people can actually travel from Earth to moon, then it's going to, like, it's not going to be just only few organization who knows what moon is, right? It's going to open the door for a lot of people. Like India just landed on a dark side of the moon. So the good thing is that you can't say that NASA is lying because NASA is not the only one. Everybody's playing in this. So that to me is a great thing, that the whole world is going to be interacting with the moon energy in a way that we're going to live there and stuff. So if there is a lot of things that was lied about, it's going to come out in open. So to me, that is a good news, right? Ultimately, we all want to know what's really, really happening.
Right.
Okay, so going back to your second question, I actually, there are times I struggle at my work because I almost feel like a person that a lot of people look at me as like I am a pattern buster. Because, you know, first of all, I will be very honest with you. Most of the times I'm in the meeting or anywhere I am, there's not anybody from my country at all, most of the time, okay? And if there is, actually, yeah, I have not run into anybody from my country. And if there is anybody from India, for example, they're men and they usually were born and raised in America, right? So they're not even from I'm like an immigrant technically, right? Thirdly, none of them are into spirituality like I am and talking about quantum physics and writing a book about quantum being and talking about empowerment. No, not at all. And fourthly, they're all like stuck on a problem. And here I'm looking at it from a whole different perspective. And usually my position at NASA is not something that I can, because I truly did not take any position to lead anything, because they actually look for a certain characteristics to be a leader. And I usually, because I'm so unpredictable, nobody wants me to lead anything at NASA in that sense, right? Like I'm a senior system engineer. I'm responsible for products, but not people. Because in order to be responsible for people, there are certain political route you have to take, which I don't follow at all. Right? And I've always been ready. Like when I start doing this actively with this podcast and talking about whatever I felt, I always had my resignation letter ready, because I knew that if I have to resign or if I get fired, I'm okay with that. Because you know what? It's time that we all just embrace the truth.
That's right.
Okay.
So I have a question. So what do you say to people that like, how can I phrase that? What do you say to people that say that the earth is flat and then is like, it has a dome and it has water around it?
Well, I say that first of all, I mean, my entire career depends on Earth not being flat, if you think about it, right? Secondly, I believe very much in the consciousness and the flower of life pattern. And if you guys are familiar with the pattern of flower of life, and when you see everything comes into existence in the form of the sphere, right? So to me, naturally, there's a phenomena that gets followed by anything that comes in physical existence, and it follows a certain type of sacred geometry. So when you really consider all of that, Earth being flat, the way people think, does not make sense to me, okay? And I also say that people who are so hung up on Earth being flat, that they actually have created the whole, you know, like a thought process, to the point where most of the time they're arguing with people who don't believe that it's flat. I'm like, what are you really getting from it? Because at the end of the day, whether Earth is flat or Earth is square, does it affect your every single day life?
Right.
And how is like you fighting with another person? And let's say both of you are wrong. Maybe Earth is something else that we don't even know, because we can't know that. So now you're wasting your energy on something that is not helping you. Plus, every single person is a mirror to you. So why would you waste your entire time interacting with the mirror that brings the opposite point of view so you can argue? I mean, that is not the fun way to live, you know?
So why would we go to? Oh, are you gonna go now? No, you go. Graciela.
No, I think it's kind of like not off topic, but kind of in like the sense of like delusion. I feel like I'm very delusional in a lot of things in my life. Let's say if something bad were to happen, I come up with like this delusion on why it was supposed to happen, but like in a positive way. So like when something negative happens to you, do you like come up with like this some sort of delusion, oh, it was meant to happen, you know, like how do you like go about those certain things, if that makes sense?
So one thing that I have to say is that every single thing happens with you, there's a reason for it. Every single, good, bad, ugly, right? That's just the fact. Because at the end of the day, you are here to transcend yourself. You're here to understand yourself. And because I told you that everything, you know, there's a tip of the iceberg and then there's a hidden part of the iceberg. The hidden part is your subconscious, right? So when you're dealing with anything that is not positive, it's because it's part of your storyline. It's part of you processing you. So at the end of the day, every single thing has a reason, right? The only thing where we human being needs, quantum being needs to show up for ourselves is when you keep on living in that self-fulfilling prophecy, right? When you keep on making the same mistake, that's when you need to slap yourself and say, do you really want to live like that? Because you're much more brilliant than that. Why would you want to keep on doing that? Like the first time you do it makes sense because you're learning, right? The second time you do it because maybe you're still trying to figure this out, whether it's a pattern or not, right? But if third time you do it, that's kind of what is the phrase in English where like it's kind of like it's like
Monotonous. No.
yeah, there's a phrase. It's almost like now you should definitely slap yourself because technically you're not, you know what I mean? Like let's just take responsibility for that, right? Because at the end of the day, we are responsible for every single thing that happens to us, no matter what, ultimately, right? Of course, when you're a 5-year-old, you're not going to be able to do much about it. But when you're a 15-year-old, you can. So just avail that freedom that you get as you grow and evolve, right?
Billy, do you have any questions for or comments? Well, I have something else that I would love to ask you actually. And it relates to math and science and education, right? What advice would you give to both educators and students, right? Because I think about the students here in Holyoke, and the state has receivership, which means the state took over because the education that was given wasn't working. So the state took over, right? And so when I think about the students that just detest math and science, and they're like, oh my goodness, I just can't. A lot of these same students actually are very interested in the topics about quantum physics and other things, not making the connection of math and science, right? Because they're not actually being taught about like quantum physics and science, right? And so when and this has been in the last 15, 20 years that I've seen the transition of what students were talking about, right? They were now really talking about all of this, right? And so, what advice would you give to that educator that is developing their curriculum around math and science? And what advice would you give to that student who is not feeling math or science whatsoever, but they are so interested in these topics, like with sacred geometry and all of that?
What I would say is that we really need to refine our entire educational system so that we can show the interconnectedness of every single thing, every single subject that is there. Because when people see that how all of these subjects actually are connected, then they're going to actually enjoy learning. Because, you know, right now I would enjoy learning because I already understand that, but everybody doesn't have that perspective. And I think it's almost like, you know, like when you become a doctor, if you teach everybody, like, you know, just the right hand and the left hand and the right leg and the left leg, I mean, you know, but if you see that how it's all part of the same body, then it's like, oh, wow. And then you start seeing that, oh, you know, my teeth actually is a fractal holographic, representation of everything else is in my body, right? My hand, the reason that my hand, you can do reflexology on my hand, and the very fact that it actually affects all my different organs of the body, because I have the map of my entire body on my hand. You see my point? If somebody can explain all the interconnection, then you start taking interest, because now you feel like, oh, I want to understand the hand, because I see that hand actually does represent the entire body. And I think that that is what is missing. And I was about to share, see if I can share this. I'm assuming I have a privilege to share screens, but I just wanted to share this one page. You know, I mean, I created all these type of things to explain people. But I mean, you know, when you look at this diagram, for example, see if I can move this guy somehow.
I like your title, and I like how you call it the human craft.
Yeah, because I actually refer to us as a human craft, right? Because I work on spacecraft. And when you really look at us as a human craft, and you give yourself the freedom to move wherever you want to move in the space and time. And that freedom that you actually have, that you don't necessarily avail as much, is the reason we are having so much challenges in the world right now, right? So when you really look at this diagram, you can see how physics, chemistry, biology, math, all of them are talking about the same thing from a different perspective.
So we're our own universes.
Exactly. Because if you really look at our cell and you can compare the cell with the earth, it's the same thing. So earth has human being, right? And human beings, like we have billions of human in earth, we have trillions of cell in human body. So as above, so below, that dance is going all around us. And that's the type of, I would love to be part of the board system all over the world, probably, because I really want to help in a mega way. Like I want to help in a way where, you know, if you guys have taken physics, right? You help in a way where you put like right where the center of gravity is, you put your force there, so everything else works itself out, right? So I want to be part of the system where I can give that vision, so that from that point on, then they can connect it like a chain, and then they can multiply it.
So then there's like a failure of educational systems, I imagine, everywhere, that instead of connecting all these what looks like unrelated things, no, it's all related, because we are all related too.
Exactly. And you know what? It's just like the problem we have is that we have this system that is created with the wrong intention. It's almost like if you have a health insurance system, and then they pay the therapist so that therapist can make money for the rest of their life. And if you go with the problem, then their goal is to keep you engaged with them. So now you're going to go see the therapist for 30 years, and seeing a therapist becomes part of your schedule now. Now that defeats the purpose, right? Because to me, the whole idea to go to the therapist is to solve the problem, right? If you come for coaching, right? But that is not the goal there, right? So it's really, because, you know, if you come for coaching with me, like even if you want to spend 15 minutes with me, you tell me your problem, my goal, my intention is to help you solve the problem for life. Not just for one day, not for 1 week, for life.
Right.
And because I know that I will never run out of money or run out of anything, because to me, I'm a co-creator. I can have it all. So with that Star Trek mindset, I feel like that is the mindset we need to be self-perpetuated in all aspects of our existence in the entire universe.
So actually, having to do with like manifestation, maybe like what's your process on how to you manifest things that you want in your life? Like what's your process on that?
Well, my process is that first I definitely we imagine, right? We have an idea what we want. And as soon as I have an idea what I want, I right away start thinking that how am I going to, like I create a plan to make that idea a reality, right? Because the plan is the bridge. Because, you know, you have an imagination and you have a manifestation. In order to converge the two, you want to create a plan to converge the two. So you spend your time in planning, and the action is part of the plan. And you can say you can separate the two. But planning is where actually, like, you know, I mean, and I used to teach Kabbalah, and Kabbalah highlights that very much, that planning is where rubber meets the road, right? And planning, and you can keep adjusting your plan, because, you know, it doesn't have to be one plan. You make a plan and you follow that thread. And if you run into obstacle, then you create another plan. But you keep on doing it, because the thing is that whenever you want something, why you want it is what's going to keep you at it, right? Because you have to want it badly enough that you're willing to do whatever it takes for it, right? Because otherwise, what you want is not legit if you are not even thinking about it, right? So it has to come from you. Like you have to really want it, not somebody else's dream. It has to be your dream.
No, that's real,
No,
that's
go
real.
ahead.
No,
No,
yeah.
because I understand that because sometimes I know when people really want stuff, they fail. So sometimes I think maybe that's like God or the universe telling me there's something else for me. So like, how do you know if that's really for you? And you keep trying, or to give up and maybe something else better is there for you. Does that make sense, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, so but that's actually a test for you, that how badly you want it, right? And also the thing is that whatever you think you want it, sometime you have to keep updating whether that aligns with what you really are. Because every single thing in a quantum world is continuously adapting and changing, right? So it could be that whatever you want, that's why it's important to have a very clear intention attached with it, right? Because your intention is going to drive your result better. So if you keep on failing, and then if you start judging that, maybe it's not meant for me, then see, whatever you think is right, whether you agree with it or not, it's because it's all your journey to your destination. Or you see my point? And your journey is intertwined with your destination. So it's very complex the way everything in the world is. So at the end of the day, whether you get there or not, it's a very personal thing, because nobody will feel the satisfaction that you're going to feel. So therefore, it becomes your quest.
I noticed we have about 15 minutes left, and I just wanted to, 10 minutes left, and I just wanted to get to, and it's funny because we didn't start this way, right? Quantum being. What is that? Quantum being. And because that's what a few of you were asking me too. And in your book, The Quantum Being, it kind of this is I took a quote from it, right? And then I would like for you to just say it in the way you say it, right? It bridges the gap between the two sides of the ladder, which I'm thinking is duality, right? One above, another below. These two sides are comprised of physical and metaphysical, spiritual and science, faith and fact, and physics and metaphysics. It's a recipe for a magical life.
Yes, right. And the two sides of the ladder is not duality, it actually is evolution. So it's kind of like that steps that we take, you see, because, it's almost like, it's like if you are at the kindergarten level, right? Then you have to first get to the first grade level before you can get to the second grade level, because it's an incremental learning, right? Because everything is built on top of each other, right? Any kind of games that you play, right? Like if you really think about it, every single choice that you take in your games, they kind of affect your second move, your third move, your fourth move. So that to me is just the way the Jacob ladder is how we evolve, and that's how we exist. The reason so the quantum being basically becomes the glue. It becomes the glue to all the things that we're not able to understand. Just like we said earlier, right? That every single thing that we teach in school right now, it's not wrong. It's just the perspective is not given. The glue is not given, right? So once you give the glue, then all of those learning is fine, but we need to make sure that we connect them. Just like our medicine, our traditional medicine is not wrong. It's just they don't connect the fact that all of these is one human body you're talking about, where there's a cause and effect. So if we can start looking at all of these things with interconnection, then we can solve all of our challenges, right? So the quantum being, the reason I named the quantum being, it's interesting because, in my initial name of the book was The Quantum Human. But then I learned that somebody else had already taken it. So then I was like, okay, I have to come up with a new name. And I actually am so grateful that somebody else had taken it, because the being became the right name, because it's all about state of being, because we're not solid, because human is almost like, it sounds a little bit like you parked yourself. I want to not park myself, because we are being, we are like moving. And quantum is all about the quanta of energy, quanta of light. So we are a moving human craft. And when we understand that, then we know that nothing can stay with us unless we want it to.
One, do you have another one?
I kind of just wanted to summarize it. I don't know
There's so
You go
much,
ahead, yeah.
like-
There is so much, and one of the things I think, we did touch on is that you grew up in Karachi, Pakistan, which is one of the most dangerous places in the world, right? And like our students who are growing up in cities that are labeled the most dangerous in the state, right? And so, not, and how did you, what would you say to those students and those and the people like yourselves who are still in Karachi, right? Who are not having the opportunity to leave and to go elsewhere or to have a life somewhere else. But yet they have all of these interests around what the reality or and all of this, right? What would you say to them?
Well, I say that, we are here we are having a dance with everything that we create and everything we interact with, right? So at the end of the day, wherever you are, you always have to integrate that aspect of you, right? And when you integrate that, then what happens is that your frequency and vibration changes. And when you change that, depending on what you want in life and what you want from life, you're going to either stay where you are or go somewhere else. But that will happen naturally based on your integration and your action and your intention.
I just kind of wanted to just quickly, before we go, for our audience, because I feel like the audience of Holyoke Media isn't too keen on these types of things that we're discussing. I just wanted a quick rundown on like, in simple terms, like what is metaphysics and how does it connect to physics itself? Like, I know we kind of touched upon it a little bit, but I just wanted to hear how you would summarize it.
Meta just means beyond, okay? So metaphysics means beyond physics. And so metaphysics, they came up with the fact that, physics because limits, and physics has always been a classical physics, right? So people have always been, for all these years, we have been only focusing on classical physics, which is why it's a very dense physics, right? So when quantum physics, which was actually introduced 100 years ago, which now we are embracing it, opens the door to explain metaphysics from a scientific terminology, right? So it kind of helps justify. So metaphysics has been there for, because it's an ancient knowledge, it's an ancient wisdom. And the whole idea is that there's more than meets the eye, right? And people should know that no matter how much, you can't put all your eggs in one basket of science or one basket of classical physics, because that's limiting your human craft that is multidimensional.
Right, and I feel like metaphysics, right, kind of has to do with like the things that we don't see in reality that are actually at play. So like, how we feel our thoughts and we can feel ourselves thinking, could feel emotions like we mentioned earlier, and things like the aura and the soul.
Exactly.
All that type of stuff.
Exactly. All the things that we can't explain, we can't see, all of that. And that's why metaphysics is a very, like it's an umbrella name that just covers,
Right.
it just covers all of that. And that's what I'm saying, that it's interesting how all of those things that truly is where rubber meets the road, because that's dark matter. That's where the dark matter is. That's where everything unmanifested is before it becomes manifested. So the very fact that we have all never wanted to dwell into that is just along the line of therapists wanting to stay in therapy for 30 years because that's how they make their money.
Okay, yeah, for real.
Yeah. So, in your perspective, what is time, right? And then, like, because I was talking to Rhonda about it earlier, like tunnel vision, like parallel
lives.
like, so the way I look at it is like, let's just say you're trying to make a decision, right? And you like jump parallels, like parallel universes, like in a way, like I'm talking about more like manifesting. Like let's just say I want this way, so I'm gonna jump stuff universe. Like I can't explain it too well, but just like I call it like tunnel jumping. Like
Right.
your thoughts.
So we may have to do this again because I have 2 minutes, but I'll do my best. One thing I would recommend is if you guys can get, it's called Einstein's God model. It's the name, it's a very scientific and extremely incredible show on Amazon. If you can get that, it's going to answer all the questions regarding the parallel jumping part of it. Time, I actually quote Mike Dooley, who's the author of Infinite Possibilities. I love the book. And he explains time as an acronym. And he says time is trace each other into material existence. And that's exactly what I use time for. So time is actually a tool. Time should not run our life. We should avail time so that we can match to our dreams, right? Time should be a tool. And when you start understanding theory of relativity, right, where basically time is relative, just like space is relative. So that's why time dilation does work. And therefore, I use time dilation in time management. And I teach that.
It's awesome.
Thank you, Shehnaz, Soni. I am so grateful and appreciate you taking the time to, to come on and speak to our youth, our community, our elderly population. It has been, I love quantum dancing with you. So thank you for coming on and dancing with us, Any last? Say thank you, yeah.
Oh, yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. And just keep your chin up, guys, because my God, we have a world to co-create. So keep on following your heart desire and don't let anyone stop you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Lots of love, light, peace, and a huge hug to you, Shehnaz. Thank you so much. Thank you. Keep shining your light for the world to see.